Hello, welcome back to the fourth part now in module number 7, our series on active listening and questioning skills. We've gone through the first 3 listening components of how to listen actively, but now we're going to talk about some barriers of listening that you probably shouldn't do, especially when asking questions. So I have a list here. There's lots. We'll go through each one in a bit more detail. The first 2, though, are more of a statement. If you're in a different country or just working with people who are of different backgrounds than you are, there's going to be different body language. There's going to be different kinds of intonation. There's going to be different types of statements and ways to express oneself, and you just have to be very careful with that. And it will cause confusion, but we should always try and clarify how it works. And let's go on now to complex responses, our third one. This is about being long-winded, speaking too much. So if you give a very long, complex response, blah, 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 this kind of breaks the flow of conversation, and it actually makes it less likely that you will gain an understanding of the other person's position. So just keep your responses short, simple, and they will be more effective. So when you have a question, which is your response, keep it short, and it will be understood more effectively. Also, bad body language, inappropriate nonverbal cues. So if you're facing or leaning away from the other party, or just not maintaining eye contact, looking tense, or presenting a very closed posture, like crossing your arms, if you're doing all this, what you're saying is actually contradicting your body language, then there's no possibility of the other party opening up. Now, sometimes we want that, right? We kind of use our body language, cross our arms, look away to say, yeah, okay, bye, I'm done. But that's not exactly how you want it to go in a professional setting. Remember that your postures and your gestures must always reflect that you are paying complete attention to the person speaking to you. Be open in your arms, your legs, face them, all of that. Distractions, don't look at your phone or look elsewhere, because that forces you to send inappropriate nonverbal signals to the speaker. And it only takes one of those things to just ruin what you could have gained from listening well and actively, or also creating a negative rapport with the speaker, who will surely notice you doing these things. There's also pretending understanding, when you don't actually understand, but you're just like, sure. So if you don't understand, always look for clarification in a very direct way. Say something like, sorry, I didn't get that. What are you saying exactly? And then just saying and hoping, okay, wait, let's see if I understand. Just hoping that their meaning will eventually become clear. It's not necessary, and it just undermines the whole process. If you're confused, ask a question. The general rule that I learned in teaching, well, actually I didn't learn it in teaching. It was something I remember learning in high school, where the teacher said, do not be afraid to ask a question. Guaranteed, if you have a question, it's 90% true that someone else, at least one other person in the class, will also have that same question. So don't be afraid to ask a question, right? If you don't understand, say it, clarify, and you'll be doing everyone else a favor too. Now, there's also some inappropriate responses. If someone asks you a direct question with your name, and then you kind of vaguely don't answer it, it's not very good. You should usually just answer it, not look for any deeper meaning, right? If they say, so when are we going to get some extra resources? Just say, we're getting 2 more people next week, actually, on, I believe it's Monday. Or if you don't know, say, well, I should know by Thursday. All the details are not in yet, but Thursday, yeah. Then you can proceed to ask more questions if you actually need clarification, but just don't try answering questions with another question, because then that makes you feel like, I don't really want to answer this question right now, so what did you eat for lunch? You know, something like that. Another thing, spotlighting. It's not a real word, at least I don't think it is, but we would say taking the spotlight. So this refers to the tendency that most people have to share equally in the conversation, right? You talk, I talk, you talk, I talk, you talk, I talk. So this, instead of changing it to just a passive role where you're listening, okay, then instead you're taking the focus off them, and putting more of it onto yourself. That's not listening. This is very difficult to avoid when you feel, okay, yeah, I understand. I understand everything. And then you want to take the spotlight and put your own comments in. But before you are tempted to do that, remember, as soon as you start giving advice or you start giving instructions, now you're not the one listening. They're the one listening to you. So be careful. If you should be in that listening role, make sure you take that role and run with it, work it, do it well. Another one, stereotyping. When you are asking for clarification using reflective questioning, which is our next one, or that we talked about before, it's very easy to begin the normal habit of starting your questions like, are you saying that, or do you mean that? Be very careful with this, especially with your tone of voice, because if you sound patronizing, like, I don't think you're right, I think there's another answer, then that puts a gap, a separation between you and the speaker. You should only use this kind of question for clarification when you actually really need something clarified. But just watch your tone of voice with that one, as always, with everything. Our last one, over or under reaching kind of questions. Overreaching is about ascribing meanings that go so far beyond what the other party's expressed, right? You're stating up your own interpretations that just, they're not what they said at all, right? It's putting in your own part into it. So underreaching, the opposite, it involves missing the meaning totally of what has been said, because normally it's because you don't actually agree with it. You have your own view of how things are. So when people are like this, they usually aren't willing to listen. It's going to be, okay, it's my discussion. And if someone says something different, they're going to tone out and not listen with an open mind, because they only have their one way of thinking. It's not a discussion. Now, it can be tempting to seek confirmation of your own words, right? And you may need to consciously avoid doing this, right? You don't need to always hear yourself, and you don't always need to hear your views stated, okay? So more listening and less talking. Those are our 9 barriers for today, and that makes the end of this Module 7 series. I hope you learned something, and we'll look at more in the class. See you next time.